actually, you won't be able to do that.
Why?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
It said you disabled the screen sharing.
I'll fix it for you now, but. All right, you ready?
Mr. Hoey,
Yes, how are you, Billy Joe?
good, and you? I like you have a new background.
Yeah, I had to change it up.
Yeah, you look all official now.
We're gonna have quite a year, Billy Joe, you know that, right?
Yep, we're ready though, right?
Feel like that, yeah?
You should be all set, Dr. Boyd.
And that is frustrating. Now I see why Mr. Dillon gets frustrated with the mute button.
If I could just ask the members not to mute yourself, because I think with just half of you, I've got to unmute you, and the other half I don't for some reason. But
Yeah, definitely don't mute yourself. It's extremely frustrating.
The problem is been all the background noise, like
I know, but
on your computer, and I
Yeah,
get
let-
text saying that my emails are going off and you can hear them.
You better let the cats out.
So are you saying I can't control my?
you can do what you want, Mike, but I'd prefer you don't mute yourself, just because sometimes it won't let the participants unmute themselves for some reason.
Is everybody there, Jim?
I don't know if I see Connie yet.
Okay.
Sorry, I just missed that whole thing because my internet went out.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Don't unmute yourself because it's difficult for the host to get you back on. So if you can stay unmuted, that would be best.
All right. Well. All right.
It's up to you. If you feel as though it's unmuting for you, Mike, go ahead. But sometimes it's requiring me to unmute people. I don't know why that is, but
I think that's if you put them on mute.
yeah,
then-
the
no?
last meeting it was muting people. It was saying that I had to unmute them, and it was inconsistent. That was the problem. So it was hard to track who I had to do that for and who I don't. I don't think I see Jackie yet, unless
All right, we'll give it a minute.
oh, wait a second.
There you go.
Did you go to the subcommittee last night?
Yeah, but city council.
How'd it go?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Annoying. Anything new in the world?
No. What do you think, Jim? Everybody signed in yet, or?
No, not yet.
Okay. Who are we waiting for?
Jackie, here she is.
Okay.
I'll turn that down if that's too loud.
No.
We should be all set.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll call the meeting, May 20th, 2020, school committee meeting to order. Do a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
flag,
United States
United
of
States of
America,
America,
to the
to
republic,
the republic
which
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
God,
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call?
Miss Martin,
Here.
Miss Clark,
Here.
Mr. Dakota,
Yeah.
Mr. Dillon. Miss Doherty,
Here.
Mr. Hoey. Okay. Mayor Leahy,
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. I'd like to take a minute. We have a couple of, we'd have a moment of silence for a couple of people here. Like to have a moment of silence for Pam Daly, who's a school psychologist. And a moment of silence for Dino De Silva. He was a school custodian. His last position was downtown at the administration office. Like to offer a moment of silence for
Mr.
Pam
Mayor?
Daly and Dino De Silva.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add in
Sure.
one, I'm sorry, I didn't communicate it to Minerva, but I do know that Mr. Eugene Welch had passed away. He was a former teacher at the Moody Junior High School. Don't ask me how I know that, but he was one of my teachers and was a wonderful teacher in the Lowell Public Schools and recently passed away. If we could include him, that I would.
Sure, you're right. I think I did a moment of silence in city council for him. I forgot. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you. Thank you. 3, special order of business. This meeting is being held remotely in the accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts, March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, Section 20. 4, we need approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes of the special meeting of the Lowell School Committee, May 6th. Need a motion to approve the minutes on May 6th and to place them on file by Mr. Dillon, seconded by Mr. Hoey. Permission to enter, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you. The permissions this week relate to grants as well as out-of-district tuition that were available for questions. The committee has any. Otherwise, it's recommended for approval as written.
Any questions on the permission to enter? I can't see everybody right now because of the presentation that's up there, so if somebody has something, just jump in until all the pictures come back on the screen. So I apologize, I just can't, I can only see Mr. Hoey and Mr. Dillon right now, Mr. Dakota.
You did first and second.
Oh, yeah. Did we do roll?
You didn't do a first or a second.
Oh, all right. What do you mean?
Commission and
Oh. Oh, all right, so the permission enter, I need a
motion to.
motion to approve the permission by enter by Mr. Dillon and seconded by Mr. Dakota. Roll call.
Miss Martin,
Yes.
Miss Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dakota,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon,
Yes.
Miss Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Hoey,
Yes,
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
7 yeas approved.
Okay, next we have unfinished business, the FY '21 budget update. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Committee, we are now less than 6 weeks from the transition from FY '20 to FY '21. On our original budget calendar, tonight's meeting was scheduled for the committee to take formal action on the FY '21 budget, as it would typically do in a typical year. But this year has been anything but typical. Families across Lowell and across the world are feeling the effects of COVID-19. Families have lost loved ones. More and more are losing their incomes. Some long-standing nationwide chains are starting to shutter for good. And while the governor recently announced a phased reopening plan, a return to normalcy remains months away. Tonight, we are yet again faced with an unprecedented decision. The district is in need of an FY '21 budget, but there are still far too many unknowns for the committee to responsibly adopt any type of annual budget at this time. Thus, following the discussions with the city, I am recommending that we take advantage of the flexibility provided by the state and proceed with a 1/12 budget for the month of July. Authorizing a 1/12 budget for July will enable us as a district to continue to move forward with the required budgeting calendar while still remaining flexible to the evolving context we find ourselves in due to COVID-19. Now, a 1/12 budget can lead to some sense of false hope. It's important for all of us to keep in mind that this is not an annual budget. It is in many ways simply utilizing the flexibility the state has authorized and the city has recommended to extend the current FY '20 fiscal year for a 13th month. It buys time and hopefully the financial picture starts to become clearer. But as Ms. Turner will share in some detail during the presentation, a 1/12 budget for July cannot simply be repeated 12 times over to get us through the fiscal year. The district's cost basis changes month to month and increases significantly once the academic year begins. Schools require more stability than a 1-month budget can provide, and our current hiring freeze will need to be lifted at some point in the not too distant future in order for us to open schools in the fall. So while a 1/12 budget for the month of July 2020 is my recommendation tonight, there are a few important points to keep in mind. 1, given the continuing statewide fiscal uncertainty, we are also proceeding with the scenario-based planning that began in April. The budget book shared during our last meeting built out just one plausible scenario of level services. We now believe it prudent to also build out a level funding scenario with the same detail. A level funding scenario was previously identified as worst case, but it now seems more likely, and a further reduction in revenue may even be possible. Indeed, some surrounding districts are planning scenarios based on as much as 20% reduction in state aid. 2, due to increased fixed costs, which must be accounted for in any scenario, level funding would require $6.7 million in additional programmatic reductions beyond the level services scenario that was outlined in the draft budget book and discussed in depth during our last meeting. Over the coming weeks, we will be working with our union partners and collaborating with our school-based leaders to consider the options available to us to effectively balance the budget under that type of scenario. With each of the scenarios we previously developed, we've been able to hold school-based budgets harmless and avoid any discussion of furloughs or layoffs. But with a level funding scenario, the scenario that we now need to plan out given the continued declining economic conditions, balancing the budget may not be possible without also looking at those areas. Our shift to fair student funding this year has positioned us well to ensure that any reduction in school-based budgets are equitable and conducted with the voice of those closest to our children, teachers, parents, and principals. We will also be engaging our union partners in the days ahead to discuss all possible options to reduce the contractually required fixed cost increases. Again, while it is prudent for us to plan for every scenario given the many unknowns, we remain hopeful this scenario will not become reality and additional federal stimulus money finds its way to Massachusetts. 3, there remain additional variables that could also significantly affect the expense side of the FY21 budget. Our transportation vendors, through their respective councils, have requested millions of dollars from the district for the time period during which transportation was not provided due to closure. As mentioned previously in response to Mr. Hoey's motion from April, the solicitor's current opinion is that payment is not legally authorized, but there is a bill circulating in the legislature which could alter that opinion. At the same time, 2 of our charter schools have requested amendments to their charters, which could significantly increase the budgetary impact of the charters on the district. Again, we believe the law doesn't allow those amendments to proceed due to the budget backlash, but like the bus vendors, we may find ourselves in a place where opposing councils disagree. 4, we also do not yet have guidance from the state on reopening or what may be required in terms of PPE and facility adjustments to enable social distancing at all times, variables which could require significant investments that cannot yet be fully assessed. In addition to scenario-based fiscal planning, we are also engaging in scenario-based academic planning for the fall semester, including scenarios of continued remote learning, returning to on-campus learning, and hybrid approaches, which include both remote and on-campus learning operating in tandem. We will share the details of that planning once the frameworks become more concrete, but needless to say, each scenario would likely have a different impact on the FY21 line item budget. 5, within all this uncertainty, there is some positive news and much needed financial relief coming in the form of the CARES Act. We are expecting approximately $4 million in revenue through the CARES Act to be available for FY21. But I need to emphasize, this is not extra money. Within level funding, we would need to plan for additional cuts of $6.7 million beyond the budget book that was shared previously. Now with the CARES Act relief, we can offset a portion of those required additional cuts through the grant. With that said, despite the many unknowns of this unprecedented time, our community should have full confidence that Lowell Public Schools will be prepared for any reality that we encounter now and into the future. It will not be easy. Answers may not come as quickly as any of us would like, and the budgeting process will be unfortunately drawn out over the course of the summer months. But every decision will be made with the best interests of our 14,500 children and the ongoing safety of our entire city in mind. With that, I'll turn the microphone over to Ms. Turner for tonight's presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
So we have some unknown variables for FY21 on the revenue side. We don't know how much revenue we're going to receive. The likely time frame of learning this won't be until the summer. So some of the things we have to consider would be the impact to local revenue, the impact to state aid, including Chapter 70, circuit breaker reimbursements, and state grant, ESSER funding, which is also known as CARES Act funding, and revolving funds. Unknown variables for FY21 on the expense side. We don't know what we're budgeting for. We don't know if we're budgeting for a traditional return, virtual return, or a hybrid. All of these have different budget implications. We can't budget if we don't know what we're going to do. We don't know what the additional cost would be, including PP&E, technology, hiring certain staff based upon whatever model we return with, pending charter amendment, transportation, and the increased cap that the superintendent mentioned in his introduction. So the FY20 opportunities with FY21 impact. I've shown you this in the last couple of meetings. It's showing you how because of the closure, we have savings with subs, payroll. We have a small shortage in the sick leave buyback. We have a significant savings in transportation due to the current opinion to not pay for services not provided. So this was totaling a $4.7 million opportunity or saving. The way we planned on offsetting that for FY21 would be by pre-purchasing the tech investment, $2 million, pre-purchasing supplies of $600,000, which we've already done, fund the revolving account by with $1.5 million, and then other, $650,000 of other, that could be fund the stabilization that we would have to do with the school committee and the city council, or we could pre-purchase school-based materials and supplies, which we're working on now. We're gathering information from the schools to see if they could buy their general supplies now which would use up some of the opportunity and savings now, but free up some of the budget for next year. Or we could purchase PP&E. This may require a school committee special session if we end up having to do any of these. There were other options brought up. There's been many calls that the state's coming together and offering many guidance calls. But some of them we can't do because we have different situations than other districts. One of them was we could prepay out of district tuition, which is an option. It's a legal option for other districts, and it's legally okay for us to do as well. But this would be unlikely in our city due to the opinions of the solicitor and, just following the rules of the solicitor and the auditor. Carry forward grant revenue for spending next year if additional funds are remaining. If we have additional savings, we're going to allow the cost to stay on the local side and let the grant money carry over so it will help us with next year's funding. What is the city doing about this problem? They're doing a 1/12 budget. Chapter 44, Section 32 of the Mass General Laws state that the mayor may submit to the city council a continuing appropriation budget for said city on a month-by-month basis for a period not to exceed 3 months if said city has not approved an operating budget for the fiscal year because of circumstances beyond its control. A continuing appropriation budget stated in that's actually equal to the 1/12 budget. They're one and the same. A 1/12 of the current year budget is approved for July so that we can operate despite not knowing what the state approved aid for Lowell is. So they take the 1/12 of the current year this year. Once the state budget is known, the budget will be adjusted and approved. The new timeline, the city already voted to proceed with the 1/12 budget. Tonight, we're presenting the 1/12 budget option. If necessary, we would have to hold a special session or to contemplate any necessary reductions and adopt the 1/12 budget for July. The city's presenting their 1/12 budget on May 26th. In June or July, we're hopefully going to receive the state revenue figures. Budgets will then be adjusted to reflect the state revenue figure. The annual budget will be presented and approved at that time. FY21 budget options as of today. We could have a level service budget, which is already developed. That's the one we presented to you. That's speculative and risky. We could level fund, which is the most conservative, but the cons would be that it creates more instability. It's a draconian measure that may not be necessary, and it would cause major layoffs. The 1/12 budget, the pros would be that it buys time and it's city recommended. The cons would be that July is not the same as September or June, so costs fluctuate each month. So the recommendation is to authorize the superintendent to proceed with 1/12 budget plan for FY21 for the month of July 2020, including the steps on slide 8. And that was the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. So I think you can see clearly here is this is not a great option. It's just the least bad option available to us during a very, very difficult budget period. There simply is not enough known in order for the school committee or for me to recommend to the school committee any type of responsible budget for the entire year. That leaves this option available to us. Speaking with the city manager, there's about a 2-week time frame between now and the budget hearing on the city side. The city will be taking up its 1/12 budget, Mr. Mayor, I believe on Tuesday, which leaves
We're gonna do that June 9th, though.
June 9th is your hearing.
I'm pretty sure that's when they were talking about bringing it up.
All right. So we got about a 2-week time frame here. I don't anticipate within that 2 weeks and the conversations I've had with many that this picture will become any clearer within the course of the 2 weeks. But we are looking for guidance from the committee with how you would like to proceed with those 2 weeks so that we can provide to the city what they are recommending and requesting, which is the 1/12 budget, absent any additional information coming forward.
So I believe we need to schedule a public hearing though to do the 1/12 budget also?
I'm seeing Ms. Finance Chair Martin is nodding her head.
Yes.
Right. So we can't really even approve it tonight, right? Because we have to have the public hearing.
What
And
what
we
I'm
have
looking,
to have our conversations as well.
yeah, I would look for authorization here for us to proceed down this path so that we can go back to the time frame on the 8th. We can get those scheduled in. Go back to slide 8, whoever's controlling the slide deck. So that we can start moving down with a really condensed time frame between now and 2 weeks from now for the June 9th. We may or may not get new information. It doesn't appear likely that we'll have new information within that time frame.
Sure. I can't see any of the things.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Mayor?
Sure,
Ms.
go ahead.
Clem? So could I ask, would the administration be able, because realizing that there's a lot of work that goes into this, so I recognize that. If we were able to, next Wednesday, schedule the budget hearing, and what I think would be helpful, for myself certainly, is that the format should be showing us the July expenditure, so the July budget, but then we should also have a column that's reflecting the full year, the anticipated full year. Because as the superintendent and I know Ms. Turner have mentioned, our spending isn't necessarily even over the course of a year. So, July is a lighter month, say. But I think it's going to be important, even as we're making decisions around a July budget, we do need to have the full picture in mind of what the full year is going to look like. And I think the reality is that as we're looking at positions and things like that, I think the committee will need to be prepared as we do our line by line review. I think there will be some expenses that we're going to need to put into a suspense account. Those can be kind of held off to the side for the July 1/12 budget, but that the committee will need to be aware that we will be revisiting that once we get more information and can move forward with a full budget. So I don't know if that's too much in
Ms.
terms
Turner?
of developing the budget document.
So to clarify, I currently have the existing budget that I gave to you last time, but I
Yep.
added a column with the 1/12 of this current year's column. So I already have that. It shows 1/12.
Okay.
But it's just that things fluctuate. So in other words, we may not even spend the entire 1/12 amount in July
Of course.
because it's a cheap month. But that I already confirmed with the city CFO that if we didn't utilize the full, I think it's 14.9 million for the 1/12 amount.
Yeah.
If we didn't use all of that, that carries forward. If we did still have a 1/12 budget in August, it would carry forward the remaining amount so that if in August our cost increase, it would go up. So if that's what you mean, I already have, so the current budget document shows this current year's
Right.
budget. So it shows this current year's budget, and then now there's a column with a 1/12 amount for
Okay.
each line item. So if that's what you mean, I already have it.
Now you're just a great big show off.
Sorry. And
I
as
think
far
that's
as,
exactly what we'll need to review, Ms. Turner. I think that's great.
and the only problem though is that the second request in that, what you just stated was that we would show a column for the full year. Well, if you're talking about the current, the amount that we're budgeting off of, which is this current year, that full year is there, but we can't budget for the full year because we don't, like, in other words, there's not another column showing a full year cost because we don't know what the budget is yet. So
Right.
it shows, the budget would show current year, what we had proposed with that 50% of SOA, and
Right.
then a 1/12 amount. So it's showing three different
Okay. Yeah.
areas.
I think that's exactly what we need. So thank you very much. I think that's great. So if that's already in place, if we could, based on the will of the committee, schedule the budget hearing for next Wednesday.
Excuse me.
Sure. Ms. Turner, could you get the screen cleared so I can see the faces? Is that possible?
Yes. There you go.
All right.
I apologize. I apologize for interrupting, Ms. Martin, but I believe we have to give 2 weeks notice for the public hearing. It has to be in the paper and you have to give 2
okay.
weeks notice. So we couldn't do it next Wednesday. It would have to be the Wednesday after that. Or the Thursday, I don't know. I mean, we got messed up with that before. If you don't give 2 weeks public notice in the newspaper, That's the requirement. That,
You should,
that would,
you should,
Sure to be
I
June.
defer to you on that. That's,
It'll be
you should
June
still be
3rd.
all right. Though, Mr. Mayor, you're saying June 9th is the city
Yeah.
hearing?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they said, so.
All right, so 2 weeks is bringing us to June 3rd. That should still work. If the 2 weeks there, committee member Doherty, there's, we can work to schedule that out.
could I have a question too, sorry.
Sure.
Thank you, Ronnie. Through you to Ms. Turner, just want to make sure I understand that the 1/12 budget is based on our current year. So it wouldn't have proposed reductions in staff because the ones that have come before us, I don't think it's a secret, I have major concerns with those district support specialist positions. So this would just be what we have for the current year, 1/12 of that, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, so we'd be having a column that shows what from FY '20. Then we'd have a column that shows the proposed for FY '21, which does have the cuts.
Oh,
And
hold
then
on. We don't have a
but-
proposal for FY. We can't provide any kind of proposal. I have no guidance, no direction, no authority to provide you any kind of proposal outside of 1/12. So what we could show you is what would last year's budget look like month to month. You'll see what the 1/12 would be, which enables it for June. What we could do and what we're planning to do is to move through a level funded scenario, which is what the 1/12 would be. For July, the 1/12 doesn't require us to consider these types of cuts because July is essentially our cheapest month. But if I'm going to build out a 1/12 based on a level funded scenario, what was provided before would require $6.7 million of additional revenue. So it actually wouldn't balance on a level funded or a 1/12 funding scenario. So we can build it out, but what we could provide very easily next in 2 weeks is we could simply show you what the month to month cost out would be based on this year's. So we're viewing this 1/12 of meaning July as basically a 13th month of the current fiscal year. The reason it works without any kind of decision point is because July is our cheapest month. But if I can to build that out so it continues to balance, it would be a level funding scenario that requires 6.7 million of additional reduction. We'll get to you whatever is most helpful, but a funding showing the cost increments over time of this current year, we can definitely provide that. It just won't fund. It just is not going to balance out each month, but you'll see the spikes so that the committee knows what spikes are coming each month as it goes forward.
In other words, we wouldn't be able to afford, if we did the budget that I had presented to you, the 14.9 million, that's the 1/12 of current year, we wouldn't be able to afford that budget with what we know we have based on this number that we have in front of us. But I do have the 1/12. So just to answer your original question, I do have the budget broken down to a 1/12. So there's 2 columns, the level, the current year and the 1/12 amount.
All set?
Yeah,
Okay, sure, Mr. Hoey.
thank you, Mayor. You, Mayor, to the superintendent. We're only recommending the 1/12 for the month of July. I have no problem. I'll back that up. But when you said $4 million, it was grant money, that was from Title I, correct?
It's from the CARES Act. It is coming to us using the same formula as Title I, but it's not Title I. Title I has certain stipulations in it that don't apply to the CARES Act.
Okay, thank you for answering that. I just have a couple more questions. It's about, well, things I want to make comments about busing and transportation. It seems like we're focusing on like we have a lot of money. That's the way I just looked at when it comes to transportation. And then I have concerns because I've been doing some research on charter schools and what might happen to us with busing. I think one charter school, I'm not going to say names, but one charter school is looking to maybe save us some money, and another one might change their schedule that will cost us a lot of money. Transportation to me is a very difficult thing to research, but we have some big issues that we have to watch, and I just wanted to bring that up. So I bet you guys are on top of that, but I just want you to know how I feel about charter schools and busing.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dakota?
Thank you, Mayor. Uh, I'm glad you brought that up, because I have a similar question about the busing issue. I mean, there been any discussions about the whole social distancing aspect of putting all those kids on the bus? And how will that precipitate a need for more buses or more routes and actually more cost?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dakota. So through the mayor, we have, that's part of our scenario-based academic planning. We don't have any guidance at all with what opening is going to look like. So we are moving down a path of planning out for what remote learning could look like, what on-campus learning could look like, and what a hybrid approach might look like. Transportation obviously needs to be considered in any of those, but absent a vaccine or some type of extremely reliable and effective treatment, we could anticipate and probably should anticipate, even absent guidance, that some type of social distancing will be in order. So we're working out the plan, multiple scenarios, and hopefully we receive some type of guidance that allows us to choose the scenario closest to what the state's asking when that comes. Was that enough of an answer, Mr. Dakota?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Dillon, did you have any questions? Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Ms. Clark, do you have any questions? Okay. All right. So, Ms. Martin, so we're gonna go public hearing on July 3rd. Correct?
June
June
3rd?
Yeah, not July, June 3rd.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I want to make sure the guidance is clear. What we can easily complete by that time would be showing the changes in cost for the current year budget, so you can see that over time. But for us to present to you a level funded balanced budget, I don't know that we'll be able to gather the amount of input necessary for us to bring that back to you within 2 weeks. So month to month showing the fluctuation will be sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna have to be for now. All we can do is move forward with the 112 budget until we get guidance from the state and federal money's coming in, right? So, I just had a couple of questions. How are we doing with our unions as far as contracts for anything coming up after July 1st?
Dr. Ho?
We had a subcommittee meeting, Mayor, and had some discussions in executive session on Monday, and we have ongoing discussions with the unions. We had a brief negotiating meeting this morning in regards to potential reductions in force and what it would look like potentially given the level of funding.
So what about our deadlines for like May 15th and June 15th?
The teachers agreed to move their reduction date back 2 weeks for non-renewal, which is now June 1. LSAA is June 15th, but today they agreed to move that to July 1st. We do have a lot of teacher and paraprofessional openings, which provide some sort of cushion against the UTL dates. But LSA was kind enough today to give us another 2 weeks leeway. And we'll continue discussions about that if it's appropriate or agreeable to move that back further, should the conditions warrant.
Okay, so LSAA was what date again?
It was June 15th, now it's July 1st.
And what's the date on the other one? For the,
June 1st for the UTL, and myself and Mr. Georges are going to talk again to see whether or not the parties or the UTL would agree to move that back further if the funding situation isn't clear.
okay. All right. So we're just gonna move to.
Just to have a say thank you. You're not gonna take any action.
Well, the action is to have the.
Mhm.
So,
So do you want to have a vote to have your first budget hearing June 3rd?
yeah, so we'll
During
have
the
a,
regular school committee, but that's a regular school.
yeah, we'll do it, have to do it during the regular school.
Okay.
day. So we need a motion to have the public hearing on June 3rd by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Doherty. Roll call.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dakota,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon,
Yes.
Ms. Doherty,
Yes.
Mr. Hoey,
Yes,
Mayor Leahy.
Yes,
7 yeas approved.
okay, thank you. Mr. Hoey?
Ms. Doherty brought that up because 2 weeks is probably what we're gonna need to see some type of numbers from the state. But through you to the superintendent, were you on Zoom today with Senator Kennedy? Because I know how he's left me constantly saying, don't give up hope yet. And I don't know, today you Zoomed with him?
I did.
You get any word from him?
He said, he said approximately 3 weeks would be the next most likely time period where we would receive some clarity. He did apologize. He was hopeful that we would have some information by tonight. It just wasn't possible. He did say the federal stimulus possibility is what's holding up the state conversations. They are awaiting some kind of word from the federal government of whether the stimulus would be coming, when it would be coming, and how much might be coming. So they're sitting almost in the same position we are.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we're into the motions. First motion of the night by Mr. Dillon. Request superintendent provide an update on the Cree studio, staffing, technology, capabilities, and usage for discussion, incorporating online content production into the future. Talking about Mr. Howie, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Yeah, refunding the television, should have done, totally. I think we learned of part of creating video content and talk about preparing them for the first 20 years of their life, as opposed to the first 20 years of our lives. And if this quarantine situation is teaching us anything, that is true. And the skills I'd love them, especially moving into new high school. That'd be big of what we're thinking about with technology. And it's not. I'm a television studio. In 1998, when I got into Lowell High School, we had a brand new television in every classroom. We were ahead of our time. We had morning announcements on television, and I know a lot of kids who ended up going into the communications movie business or making making music, making videos, and benefited greatly from that program. And in today's time, we should have kids making online video content every day. And big picture stuff that I think of is partnering with the city, and we could have our kids making public service announcements all the time, school announcements, and it could be a huge benefit for our school, this community. So I want us to be aware of it, and certainly moving into the new high school, make sure that that's a main focus of our technology spending. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further, just show Mr. Hoey?
I just want to say a little bit about his motion. I know this isn't the first time I've seen a motion almost exactly like that. But it's great to see Mike bring this out right now at this time, because technology is being in everybody's pockets and all this data talk. I remember what brought that TV studio to you was called the Edward Cormack of 1993. And I was on the school committee in 95 that created this studio. I think you're right. It would have saved us a fortune now. People want to charge you a lot of money just to flash children's faces on TV. So I'm with you, Mike. I think it's a good time to bring it up. Budgets, and it's something the superintendent now heard you say. So great motion as far as I'm concerned. Nice job.
And somewhat related to that motion, I just got word that LTC signal has gone out. So Dr. Hall, if you can hit record on your hosting option. Thank you. I apologize for the interruption.
Thank you. Any further comments on the motion? I just want to say one quick thing is that this is a great motion, and I was very disappointed over the last few years when the funding for the positions got canceled, and we didn't utilize the TV studio the way we should have. Um, I'm a little biased, but we lost a couple of great people. Mr. Jack Penard was a great asset, and we were unable, under the last administration, to keep him. And he left and had to find another job, and that was just really disappointing in my eyes. So I'm glad that you brought this up, Mike, and great motion. So this does need to come back to form, and it's a great asset for the high school kids. We're lucky to have it. So if we owe it to get this TV studio back up and running. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Second motion of the night by Mr. Hoey. In consideration of the stress and issues that the students are dealing with because of the COVID-19, request superintendent initiate a task force to look at how to take advantage of all our staff's skills to best transition from this school year to the next school year. Seconded by Mr. Dakota. Thank you. Mr. Hoey.
Thank you very much. I want to just, maybe I'll hold off and thank who sent me this information, but I want to read this to you real quick and then I'll say a little more. So I appreciate you dealing with me here. Mr. Hoey, is there anything the school department can do that will enable teachers to have at least one last opportunity to see their kids in person before school officially lets out for the summer? Teachers are often the first to notice child abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, all kinds of things. And they're the first ones to make proper referrals. They've been away now since March, and I'm afraid that a lot of stuff is happening that's going unreported and unnoticed to some of these kids that are at risk. It's none of my business, Bob. I'm just expressing a concern. So after at that time, I'm looking at what we're doing for the seniors. I was stuck on the seniors. We all were. Everybody wants to do everything for seniors. And Lowell should be proud of what they've done. I'm not going to talk about that right now. I want to stay on my main issue. I've been abused in a few ways, physical, mental, in other ways. And my family, I know, has been abused. Sometimes some of these students have a mother that was maybe like my mother, 16, and she had kids and got a divorce early, and you live in a housing project, and it's almost like you're up there as bait. People drive through those houses looking to do bad things to people. And there is a lot going on. I didn't want to sit here and tell you how I've been abused, but if you ever want to watch City Life, I'll tell you more there. I don't want to say too much in the chambers. But I'm so happy that we have the administration and the people that are under them, because that's who I go to get this help. And I know we can have an open house. That's what I was telling some of these our administrators. Why can't we have a special open house right now? Something with fun, like you already had down in the Kennedy Center there and gave out 1,300 backpacks and stuff. Right now, let the kids come into the school. I think we could do it safely. Walk in and see their teacher for 5 minutes. And not that I'm looking for, go look for people that have been abused. It's not going to happen that fast. So the motion that's out there, I probably don't convey the message that I want to for that motion. But when you turn it over to the Lowell Public Schools staff, like that motion reads, something great's going to come out of this. And I just wanted to put that to everybody's ear. This motion's huge to me. And I won't thank that person right now, but there's a couple of people I'll thank in the future. And I'll be on City Life when I have to do that, because I don't want to talk about some things in what I consider our chambers right now, even though we're Zooming. Thank you, Mayor, for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next motion tonight by Mr. Hoey. That facility subcommittee meet to talk about the procedures to name areas of the new high school and determine whether current dedications will carry over to the new Lowell High School from the current school building, seconded by anybody with a shorter name, Dylan. Thank you, Andy. Mr. Hoey.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm bringing this up as a motion because I think that's how you have to call for a subcommittee. Haven't had one in a long time for me. It ought to be something. I'm glad I've been able to watch Hillary run hers, and Connie always runs a great one, but mine ought to be interested too. We're talking about dedications. I bet you'll be an interesting subcommittee. So nothing else to say except I can't wait to find a date that we can all get together and talk about that.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Sure, Ms. Martin.
Just to bring up that traditionally all of the naming goes through an ad hoc naming subcommittee that you populate. It traditionally hasn't been through facilities. You could name facility, however you want to manage that. But it is generally an ad hoc committee that has a kind of a beginning and an end to be charged with a specific task. So I, certainly about whether the naming opportunities transition into the new high school, certainly editorial, I hope they do. But, and then, for future naming opportunities, that's gonna be a very long-term thing. So perhaps kind of creating a separate committee to deal with it
Okay,
might make sense, but it's generally the mayor's purview.
sure. Good suggestion. Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
I,
Okay. Next, we're gonna go on to the reports of the superintendent. Before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. Mr. Superintendent, I have to just request that, when the packet goes out on Friday, it needs to be complete. I don't know how else to say it. I can't chase motions down over the weekend. They shouldn't come late. It seems like we're duplicating the packet. So if it can't go out Friday complete, I don't know what to say. Monday's too late. We're used to getting it on Friday night so we can go over it on the weekend. We all have busy lives, but these reports have to be in the packet on Friday. It just can't chase them down. So I can't stress that enough, and I would appreciate your cooperation on the next packet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think by moving to the 1 month motion, it should assist with that. I will tell you, this is the first district I've worked in where we're moving more than 48 hours. So more than 48 hours, staff is working extremely hard to make sure we can churn out all of these reports as quickly as possible. I think moving to the 1 month motion at a time should be helpful. We'll try to make that happen. We're trying to get it out as quickly as we possibly can. We are now also delivering hard copies of these reports to everyone's houses as well. We're trying our very best. So nothing intended there. It's not intended to be coming to you, but as quickly as we possibly can churn this out. So I think the 1 month will help, and we'll continue to try our best to get this out and get it to you.
Okay, but I'm not really even speaking about the reports, the document that we have. I'm not talking about this document. What I'm talking about is the responses to the motions. So when I get my packet and I go through it over the weekend and it says report forthcoming, and then last night I'm searching around through my hard copies and on my computer looking for reports. I just can't do it. And to be quite frank, some of the reports seem very easy to put together. They're not very complicated reports. So I'll just leave it at that. But the motions, reports, the responses have to be done for that Friday. We have 2-3 weeks in between meetings, and that's the way we do it in Lowell, and that's what we expect. So I'll just leave it at that, and we'll continue. Thank you. So we have reports on the motions, I guess, 8-1.
Thank you. Yes, the motions are before you, including itemized. You have the full tracking sheet as well as the itemized ones that have been updated for full reports. The respondent is also listed. Anyone who has any questions, we're available for questions.
Any questions by the committee on the 8-1 packet? Ms. Martin?
So as I'm looking at this, and I don't, I don't want to jump in order if anyone else wants to go in the order that these are listed. I don't know if Andy or Jackie have comments on their reports that they had requested.
I
Vote
do.
yes.
I'm waiting till
We can
mine.
start with, so we can start with 811.
Perfect.
Sure, so that's Mr. Dakota's motion, status on judicial bill. We can start with that. Any questions on that, Mr. Dakota?
I have just a comment on
Sure.
the last paragraph, the juvenile court building, as I know it, is a rental. The city does not own it, nor does the state. I think it's a rental, so it doesn't even fall under the purview of being able to even be considered for usage by the city or the school department for that matter. Just a point of issue on that. Am I correct on that, Dr. Hall?
I'm not sure on that, Mr. Dakota, but that might be why I didn't get a response on that. But in my time in the juvenile court way back when, I thought it used to be a federal building. I wasn't aware that it got acquired by a private entity, but
I believe Mr. Barakis acquired it and renovated it and brought it up to speed and cleaned it up and everything. But I believe it's the Barakis Foundation that owns that building. I could be 100% wrong, but I just think it is.
I suspect
You
you're
talk
right.
about Appleton, I'm sorry, Mr. Dakota, Appleton Street?
Yeah, the juvenile court.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Didn't the
Because I don't
city,
think it was federal, because the city was there for decades.
and
The
we
school
rented it,
department
right?
was there.
Hold it.
Yeah,
I think it was a post office before the school department. Was
Yeah.
in But wait,
That mean, yeah,
Sure. So that one on Gorham Street is privately owned. The one on Hurd Street, the city has gone through that one, and it just seems like there's a lot of work to be done there. We were looking at to use it for a police department. And then the one further up on Gorham Street, where the registry of deeds is, I don't even know what the shape of that building is, but I don't think it's hasn't been kept up very well either. So, for any of us, city or school department, to use any of those buildings, it seems like it'd be a lot of money to convert them. So
Yeah.
right now, the opinion is it's not worth it. So, Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, while we're on this topic, I don't know who the appropriate person to move on this is, but the St. Louis school announced that they are closing today. That building needs to be included in buildings that we look into.
Sure.
It would solve, according to our population issues in the city with our school buildings, that location is huge. So
Okay, no, that's a good thing. We'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Dakota?
In reference to the St. Louis campus, I had already been in several conversations with the priest who is the keeper of that particular school facility. And I think if the city were to make a serious proposal to them, I mean, we could pick up a very valuable piece of property that has a lot of functioning schools that we could put to use right away. It's got an empty church that could be converted into two beautiful facilities and two school buildings, along with a convent and 7 acres of land that could be used partially as a green space for that community. It would give us an opportunity to have another middle school in Centerville, which would then help us keep our transportation costs down because we could be more into the neighborhood schools. So there's a lot of wins on that one. I think we've got to really seriously consider it, and take a tour around maybe and have some talks. I really believe that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
8.12, motion by Jackie Doherty, student dropouts. Ms. Doherty, any questions?
Yes, thank you. And I do have a couple of questions and some comments. First off, I want to thank the people who put this report together. I think it does demonstrate, as I mentioned earlier, that our dropout rate has tripled in the last couple of years. And I don't know how many of my colleagues recall this, but in the 2016-2017 year, Lowell High had the highest four-year graduate rate that we had ever seen, and since we've been tracking this stuff, and it was a high 80s. And to really look at what are the factors that have led to us sliding so much that we've tripled our dropout rate, and not in any way to point fingers. That's not my intention. That was never my intention. But to look at what we need to do going forward. If we did it before, we can do it again. So some of the things that jumped out at me, and I'll start with the questions. I mean, we talk in the first page, the third paragraph, about the number of reductions to staff at Lowell High over the past 3 years. Now, I wonder if someone could tell me who we have reduced beyond the number 2 director of curriculum position and 1 clerk, because I thought we've been holding Lowell High pretty harmless in terms of the reductions we've had to do. I know we did lose that number 2 position, the curriculum position, which I have spoken about ad nauseum about how important that role is. And I think it did play a part in the attendance, but were there others than those 2? Does anybody know, or?
Ms. Desmond?
So it's my understanding that there were several positions, one in the Career Counseling Center. There were several teaching positions. And so the high school admin team felt as if, not that those necessarily were specific to dropouts, but that overall the workload increased in general for others, and as a result, felt like all of those pieces were factors in sort of just the overall picture. I will say that through the school site council process and the fair student funding process, their intent is to restore many of those lost positions. That was one of the proposals that came forward to the committee when we were initially looking at the budgeting process.
I totally agree. Those add-on positions that the school site council at the high school came up with definitely seem warranted, especially when we're talking about 100 more students at the freshman academy. I guess I'm looking to really, I go back to what I said earlier. If we did it before, we can do it again. My understanding is that a lot of that school-based attendance was the teams at the houses. You had the deans, the clerks, the guidance counselors at each house office working with the district attendance team to really make it a priority that if we had chronic absences, to go after those students. And my understanding is it really is a leadership down kind of thing. You've got to set it as a priority. So when we turn to the second page where you talk about what you're going to do going forward, I think the plan, I had some questions about the bullets of the outreach to high-risk students, the mention of the attendance team. Who are you referring to? And I don't know if this would be Ms. Desmond or Dr. Guillory, but are you talking about the attendance team within the high school, those house office teams?
So
No. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Guillory, go ahead.
thank you. I'm not sure if my internet connection is very stable here. So we're talking about, in that regard, Ms. Daugherty, we're actually talking about doing that in combination, both how can we support centrally with the work that's being done at the high school. So we're looking at how do we, I think the report that we've laid out here is saying, how do we get tighter in our supports across the board for the high school? What supports can we provide centrally to the high school? And what can the high school inform us of what their needs are, and work as a joint body together in supporting those students and families.
So when you say attendance team, you're not specifically talking high school or the district attendance team. You're talking working together.
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think that's how they did it before.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we have a model of success. And the idea of really each house and, taking full responsibility, but also having the central office support. Okay, so this is a good start. And like I said, my intention all along was to kind of flag that it's become an issue and I look forward to getting more reports and information about how you're moving forward to, again, get us back on the track that we have more of our students graduating. One of the things that did jump out at me in the report, you talked about changes in enrollment and interactions with the community. We do have a lot of newcomers. We always have. We've been a gateway city. I remember, in the 80s, it was many of the Cambodian people coming in that hasn't changed over the years. So if we were able to have the newcomers, have the language change, I mean, we have 69 languages spoken at the high school. That's been going on for decades. Yet we were able to get our dropout numbers down. So that piece doesn't seem to have changed. And I don't know if I'm missing something, but do we have the data on who are the number one at risk for dropping out? Because I don't think it is the newcomer. What's the majority of our dropout? Is it a certain group?
So there's two questions I think embedded in that. One, you're asking who's most at risk for dropping out, which would require some level of predictive analytics. That's a different question than saying who has dropped out previously, which would be a more straightforward just query on the data we have. Is there one of those that would be more helpful? I don't know that we have the capacity to run the predictive analytics, so I don't
No,
want
I'm not looking for the predictive. I'm looking to work on what we've got for information.
Sure.
I mean, that's how we're going to be the most successful, right?
Yeah, we definitely can provide that demographic breakdown. We don't have it at our fingertips, but we can provide that to you under separate cover.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Hoey?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a lot of comments to make tonight about this issue. We triple dropout rate right away. And don't forget, I always like to say this, when I was in Lowell High School, we had college course, business course, and I was in the business course. And you would always get, the teachers that really just good people are not the best of teachers, because the high school to me was always the place where a teacher, if they couldn't make it at the Pine School or the Rogers School or the Shaughnessy School, they would send them to the high school to work. And, I think we also dumbed down the high school compared to when I was in there. And there's just a few more comments I want to make. When I heard Ms. Doherty say the leadership of the high school. Well, since I've been here for the past few years, let's remember what we've had for leadership. We've had different leaderships, and we've had a lot of issues at the high school. And when this last person came into this high school, she came into a very, very hostile environment. It's just my opinion right now, but I thought she got through here with a lot of love for our students. Instead of us saying thank you for the 3 years you gave us, there's a lot of people that didn't like her leadership. And I'm almost done, but I want to say there was people working for her that helped her get through those 3 years. She has 4 schools within one, 3,200 children, second biggest high school in the state. We cut $50,000 out of the athletic department, which drives me crazy because this type of school needs more. Now, Ms. Desmond, is she working on more trades? Yes, she is. She's trying to work with the Greater Lowell Technical High School. I think the number one issue that's hitting Lowell High, and most of the dropouts, if you look, will probably be Puerto Rican or Latino kids, because they need a trade school, a lot of them. And that's where we're going wrong. We have a lot of people to talk about more trades. I do have to give ourselves a pat on the back, because I know Ms. Desmond's already working to try to get those kids we're focusing on that's dropping out into some trades, maybe at night or in the weekend. So I think we've done a lot of good things on the school committee. We don't get enough credit for it, but it's definitely a problem, and I think it's all about trade schools for about 600 to 800 kids that are at Lowell High School. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, Ms. Martin.
Thank you. So the attendance team that's referenced in this document, are there specific members of that team? I mean, job titles, I don't need individuals, but who would make that up from both the central and the high school? What positions?
So it was looking at the positions that Ms. Doherty referenced, those house offices. But then for the district side, we have our attendance officer and our attendance assistants that work in the attendance office. So from our office, there are 3 folks at the central office, and then working in conjunction with the district office. They already do work together. I'm not wanting to put out there that they don't work together now, but I think the purpose that we are articulating in this memo is for how can we work tighter and in concert when we talk about alert systems, paying attention to students as they're going along, to make sure that we're looking all those double down opportunities that we're talking about. And I think that with remote learning now, we are learning quite a bit more about students that are engaging. Some of our students that traditionally may struggle in the face-to-face, the high school is seeing that some of those students, or many of those students, are actually thriving in the remote setting now. So this is actually allowing us to see our students in a slightly different light. So it's, again, when we say the attendance team, it's looking at both the house office as well as the central office attendance team.
Okay, so that's an existing team that will continue its work.
Yes.
Okay.
But working in tighter concert on targeted students.
Okay. So then the differentiation between that and a task force?
So the task force that's referenced, there, my understanding that there was a grant that started, and there were folks that worked and did home visits during that time, but I think that was just a short run grant that happened in the 16-17 school year.
So the attendance officer reinstating a dropout intervention team is really just the existing team being
the existing team focusing, doubling down on their efforts. So looking at some of the practices that were learned during that time, and looking at how we might do our business differently to support those students.
okay. My final question would be, I know in the past we were able to use some, I think, established, kind of predictive data using, existing X2, where we were able to track student attendance starting in kindergarten, and that there were indicators, along the way that you could kind of track those students who had attendance issues early on and be able to certainly begin interventions early, but then also recognize those students as they transition into the high school and seeing them as a group that requires particular attention. Is that kind of district-wide approach going to be part of this brand new team and the work that they're focused on?
So I would say all of those are considerations. I think as a former high school principal, when I have I'll call it an opportunity to improve our metrics, I start with the end. Who are my kids that are rising up? So that intense focus on the seniors, but then also doing the bookend approach to say what's happening with my freshmen and working towards the middle in that regard. So my initial look at the work and the research that's come out of this, there's certainly much more I think that has to be uncovered and rediscovered here in this regard, but it's more about the systems and how we do our work more efficiently than necessarily bringing in a new team to actually engage in this work. Is how do we become more efficient with what we presently have? And I think that's the real opportunity. in terms of supporting our students to make it through. Our motto was to and through graduation when I was a high school principal.
A laudable model motto. What I would say though is that, you know, historically, and this isn't unique to Lowell, your dropout happens between ninth and 10th grade.
Oh, absolutely.
So that really is the, you know, by the time, I mean, for this specific issue, obviously there are other areas in which focusing on seniors and rising juniors is absolutely appropriate. But recognizing that for dropouts, the danger zone really is that 9 to 10 transition matriculation. So it's, you know, certainly something to keep in mind as we move forward and continue to receive information from the team. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Dillon and then Ms. Doherty.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that increasing opportunity to be a part of something goes a long way in school. And that includes extracurricular activities, athletics, music and art programs, dance. It goes a long way. And when those things are lacking and when money's not there, or we're just not doing a good enough job getting kids involved, when they get into the 10th grade, they don't have a reason to stay in school. But if they find an activity or they find something that they are a part of that makes them feel like they belong, a lot more likely to stick around. I just had, you know, I have to throw a nod to offering more to our kids outside of school time, activities, clubs, extracurriculars, and I'll bring stats. I'll bring statistics with me next time, but I feel like that.
Thank you. Ms. Doherty.
Miss Clark has her hand up. I can wait.
Ms. Doherty, Ms. Clark, and then Ms. Doherty.
So just a statement and thank you for putting this together. But I just think between this conversation and then also the budget conversation, just pointing out how important data is and strong collection of data, accurate capture, as well as information that is then easy to present and understand. I like the statement here about making sure that the information, dropout data, and re-engagement strategies will be shared with the head of schools, and the house deans and student support services coordinator. Because without that information, it's very difficult to make decisions and strategize how to re-engage students. And I just think we're struggling, obviously, with the budget. Lack of information, lack of data, it makes it impossible to make decisions. And I think that just is going to continue to come up over and over again. So I appreciate that is pointed out here.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Clark. That's actually something that was quite evident, even in the early going here, has been reported out by our staff. And it kind of circles back to a question Ms. Doherty and Ms. Martin asked. Predictive analytics are available, tracking all the way back to a child's first grade year. We can start to track early warning systems based on a combination of attendance, behavior, and course grades. There are algorithms available. Those types of systems are available. Matter of fact, just last year, Boston invested in one of those systems. Developing those systems and sharing them out was, as you know, a little bit of past work that I did, but it's that is available. Yeah, there's a cost to that. That is certainly something that this district is in need of. The question is going to be one of timing, one of finances, and priorities. And that's
Right. And I think that was really my point of bringing it back. We had a conversation at a policy subcommittee a few weeks ago about, really creating something in-house versus maybe perhaps purchasing. And I know the question of budget is still unknown. And so we can't make a decision at this point, but just, highlighting how important it is to have good information that we can really distribute and give that as tools and information to our administration and staff and teachers who can then help in making their decisions, informed decisions. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty.
Yes, I wanted to just circle back to clarify my comments about leadership. It was in no way a slam at any one specific leader, but this top down, I think, was what I said. And my meaning with that is when we had those 3 years where we saw those numbers do so well, we did have, as Dr. Guillory mentioned, we had a small grant. I think it paid for 2 part-time people to help with outreach. But we also had strong leadership starting at the superintendent level. I believe at that time, Ms. Sturkin was running student services, so it went from her down to the head of schools, each house dean, I forget their titles, and each team, at the high school took it on seriously. This is something we care about. And they worked with, obviously, the central office staff. The district support specialists were also key in reaching out to the schools. And I think to just kind of go back to something Ms. Martin had mentioned with those attendance teams, we have to really look at, we have a role that starts in terms of imprinting on families the importance of sending their children to school. That role of making that important right from pre-K. We talked about even with the pre-K, that if you're not going to come to class, we have a seat, we'll give that seat to somebody else if we have to. But this idea of instilling how important attendance is from the very beginning. So as we roll out these plans, as I said, I understand being efficient, working together closely, but also looking at who is going to be the lead on that. Because if we have these district attendance teams that are spread throughout the district, that K to middle school role is also important about attendance. And in terms of the data, I think we do get, DESE provides early warning information that we can access. And certainly I was looking for just what's our number one at risk? And I think Mr. Hoey said he felt it was number one dropout is male Hispanics. Maybe that's actually true, but that doesn't seem like that would be that difficult for us to know, right? We should have that at the top of our hands. If we're keeping that dropout issue at the front and center of one of the key priorities that we have, which is, I think it should. Thank you.
So, Ms. Doherty? Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say that in terms of the data, because I certainly agree that having access to accurate data is key for administrators and leaders working in the district, as well as for the committee and the greater community. We received this information in the past. So I don't understand why it's not available now, why it requires a $50,000 investment in something new. We had the capacity, we received this information as a committee, where reports were clearly showing that, which students were, being engaged. And, we're not talking about a great depth of data. Attendance data is something that's collected quite literally every day. And we can access, based on the number of absences, how many students are falling into a dangerous pattern. If we, simple pivot tables would allow you to do it at the level of our district. But I believe that the technology already exists in X2 in the system that we have. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon us to use the existing system to get this data. Again, been done before. I don't understand what's changed about X2 that suddenly doesn't have the same functions that it historically always had. So, as we move forward, certainly that'll be part of our ongoing discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoey?
Yes, I just want to make a few more comments. One is the high school. Until we get straightened out on who's the guy that picks, or who's the gal that picks the leader of the high school, we're never going to get anywhere. There's always been a problem with whoever the superintendent picks to lead our high school. And hopefully this time we stay out of his business. We put a blue ribbon committee together, 18 people all got together and all picked the same person. And we basically told him we want change, we want hiring diversity, all things I've seen him do already. And right now, one of our biggest things we're talking about tonight is your attendance officers. I know all those people. Kathy Keen's a great friend of mine. I think she works with the courts quite a bit. And I know the other ones. I'm not going to say them all by name. I'll just say the ones that I know I can say by name. But I do want to say this. The real problem is we don't want change in Lowell. We have a hard time going for change. This superintendent, hopefully he saves those people and they don't lose their jobs. But to me, the real problem is he hired 4, I think it is, parent liaisons. Everybody's upset about that. They're all upset because these people we're talking about, the attendance officers, they have a lot of knowledge, a lot of education, and they've been around us for a while. But the new wave, the way we told the superintendent to change our system, he's starting to run into roadblocks. We'll see how things go, but that's just my opinion again. But I think we got to keep our nose out of his business a little bit more, especially when it comes to the high school, and especially on this. I got questions about those parent liaisons. I definitely have questions, but I don't think this is the time to talk about them. But the attendance officers, I hope we can save their job, or at least keep them as people that work for us, because they're fat. Again, I just think we're stepping in front of out of bounds. Some of us go out of bounds when we read about the high school. Let him straighten out the high school. If how we tried to do it, he got resistant. All right, that's all he got. And then Kennedy went through crazy stuff with the high school too, because he wanted STEM in there. And it almost created a close down the high school. It's crazy. It was a very hostile environment, Mayor. I'm glad we might be able to change that this year.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just want to make a couple of observations. In the report, on the first paragraph on the second page, at the end, it talks about limited availability of alternative programming within the community. Could you explain what you meant by that? Because I thought, I mean, the Middlesex program, the adult ed, the UTech, where's the limited availability of alternate programming?
Yeah, I take that, having worked in a number of districts to redesign that. We're a district of approximately 15,000 students. It is extremely limited for us to have simply the Career Academy that has less than 100 students enrolled. So as a within district program for 15,000 students, that's significantly limited in terms of what is provided elsewhere of districts of similar size. The one program can't meet all of our youngsters' needs. So when we're looking at a youngster who's looking at withdrawing from school, typically what we have is a portfolio of options, and we can place that youngster in an option that works for them so that they don't have to withdraw from school altogether. So the more options that you have available.
Which program though are we talking about?
We have the Career Academy available as a within district program.
What I know, and I had this conversation when I was on school committee before. We have the Middlesex program, we have the adult ed, we have UTech. We don't get credit for them, but what's important, it's the student. It doesn't matter if we get credit for having these kids in our program. We have resources in the community to educate these kids. So,
UTech serves a certain profile of youngster, not necessarily a youngster who would be within our schools as part of this model. The same with our adult ed.
Right, and what I'm saying is, if we have a student that's failing in our system and doesn't fall into our programs, then we should be getting them into the programs in the community.
Yeah, that's true. Agreed. I would still assert that we have less options available than perhaps our youngsters need, and that building out more alternative options for our kids would serve our community better. It's not about whose program it is. Right. It is about the options available within. One option we talk about often is the option for additional vocational programming, but there's a multitude of options that we could provide that we're not providing. And there's reasons why we're not providing it, but it's not about who, whether it's within the district's governance or someone else's governance. It is about what's available within the community. So I'm full agreement on that. There are a number of options though that we could still certainly provide within our community that aren't.
Sure, and one other observation, I mean, I had 3 children that went through the high school. They graduated in 15, 17, and 18. And, you know, I just think sometimes we overthink these things. Things that I observed is that maybe the house deans are overworked. They're not given the opportunity to do their job. Maybe we should be looking at a discipline officer at the high school. And, you know, I hate to say it sometimes, but teacher evaluations, you know, evaluations of staff in the building. And when I think Mr. Dillon said it, you know, let's not overthink this. Kids want opportunities. They want the opportunity to be acknowledged. They want the opportunity to be part of a school. They want the opportunity to excel. And that starts with staff, teachers, everybody, parents. I mean, that's what these kids are looking for. It doesn't cost a lot of money. We have to have a program to get them engaged, whether it's smaller classrooms, whether it's sports, or whether it's the classes that they're taking. And it's a simple engagement. I think we need to engage these kids. And it, you know, let's not overthink it. I just think you just need to engage, just say hello to them in the morning. How you doing? How's the homework going? It's a little bit of work, yes. Does their family environment impede on this? Yes. But we don't need task force. We don't need to spend a lot of money. We just need to engage kids. And I mean, that's my observation with my 3 kids that went through the high school. That's what they're looking for. And I think sometimes we just try to overthink it and come up with too many plans that take time and money. And then 5 years go by and we haven't done it. So that would be my 2 cents. Thank you.
Mayor,
Sure. Who,
Mr. Dakota.
Dakota?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having been at the high school for the number of years that I was there, I would have to say that a preponderance of the staff, teacher staff, do take into consideration when a kid walks into their room, how you doing, and they do care about their students under their charge. And so I think that it way beyond something like that needs to happen. I think you hit it on the head with someone who's in charge of attendance at the high school. Perhaps might be something that's in order and probably should be housed in the freshman academy, dealing with freshmen and setting the mood for the rest of the high school experience in terms of attendance. So I think that the other thing that we haven't brought up is the LeBlanc School is another success story. They managed to get their kids to graduate that probably would have dropped out, and I think they do a great deal of work, a lot of great work with those kids. And so I think we need to keep some of the positive things that are happening and not be all down on everything that's happening within the high school setting. So I think, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna move on because everybody spoke twice on this. So why don't we move to 813 response, Ms. Martin?
Yeah, please.
Dakota.
Yeah,
Can we just move
I
on?
want to, it's too important for me to move on, Mayor. It's a big issue for me.
All right, just quickly, please, because we already spoke twice.
Quick now, Mayor, but listen, you're talking alternative schools. For the past 2 years, I've had to sit with some of my colleagues and keep hearing Miss Durkin, Miss Durkin, Miss Durkin. I mean, if you look at what Salaka Fawi did with the Cardinal O'Connor School, he said, take those 10 kids out, send them back to the Sullivan School, and send the help that they need at the Sullivan School to straighten those kids out at the Sullivan School. We don't need to build a career academy. The freshman academy is where we should be focusing, or middle schools or before that, before they even get to the high school. I always voted against these charter schools. I mean, not charter schools, I voted against them too. But I voted against these alternative schools, not the Brookside or Riverside School. That was a tremendous program out of Middlesex Community College. But the Career Academy to me has been a waste of time and a waste of a lot of money. The one over here at the LeBlanc, great school. But really, when you think about it, they might graduate 1 or 2 kids a year, but they're still worth their weight in gold there. What we need to focus on is your middle schools before they get here. And we're not doing it. I don't care what anybody tells me. Right now, we're focusing too much on this high school when we should be back in our elementary schools. Because what did we do? Destroyed everything Salaka Fawi wanted to do. Keep 4th graders back a year. check the data out on those kids. Let's see how they're doing, because I bet you they're doing awesome. We did do it for 1 year, but then they didn't want to help the Sullivan School the way they should have. I'm sorry to say it that way, but I think Kafawi was right on the money. Go back to the schools and fix the problems there. But what do? We let the kids play basketball after they smash a young girl or something like that, or bring a gun into the
All right.
school. So thank you for the time.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you. 813, remote response to motions by Ms. Martin and Ms. Dakota. Who wants to go first if you have any questions? Remote learning days and snow days?
No, I'm happy with the response.
Ms. Martin, are you all set? Or?
I do have a couple quick questions. So looking at the report, let me just focus on the charts that you included, that were included by Dr. Guillory and Ms. Desmond. Could you just walk me through what those are saying? Like starting with chart 1.
So what we sought to establish was two-way communication with all of our families to make sure that we have contacted all of them. So what chart 1 is showing is the number of schools that have had two-way communication with families during the period of remote learning to up to the date of March 14th. So initially, when we provided, I did a dipstick into this on April 3rd, you see the number of schools that were in each category. And then May 14th, you see that at this point, all of our schools are in this from 97 to 100% of having reached out or contacted all of the students under their purview.
So what this is saying then is that as of May 14th, 19 schools have 100% response rate from students.
What that's saying is that we've established two-way communication, that they've at least contacted those families. It's not saying that that's every single day at all. It's saying that they've reached out and they've made contact with all of those, with all of their families.
And gotten a response, whether by email or text or phone.
Absolutely. So that's the two-way.
Okay.
Don't we have more than 19 schools though?
You have 19 that are at the 100%, and you have the other 9 that are at 97 to 99. So that adds up to our 28.
And that's just that's one instance.
That's one instance to say that we've reached out to them, and we certainly know that the day-to-day aspect of it. And so that's what chart 2 talks about, is how the percentage of students that are engaging either on a daily or weekly basis. And so that takes into account that some of our families are working through the work packets and those types of things. So they may not be contacting or reaching out to their teachers on a daily or weekly basis, but each of our schools have set in established attendance check-in protocols that says if they've not heard or had contact with the kid in a certain amount of days, then they do this outreach again to make sure that we are keeping track, are keeping up with all of our students in that regard.
And that's referring to chart 2?
That's through chart 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in chart 2 then, so the differentiation between daily and weekly, I mean, I don't know, a student that's attending every day seems like it's a far greater level of intensity than someone who may be coming in once a week. Combining those two numbers doesn't seem particularly telling.
Right. And so I think at the moment when we were gathering it, and that's helpful feedback, and we'll try to break it down a little bit further. Because many of ours, the manner in which remote learning is set up in terms of that contact, it's basically by individual classrooms and teachers. So we've been getting and fielding that feedback, and I think that's helpful planning for how we engage in remote learning in the future. Is sort of having a system-wide approach versus the feedback that we've gotten from our families is that if I have 2 kids in the same school, they may be having a different experience depending on the teacher. If a teacher, even my own son, his teacher does a Monday, Thursday check-in, but each day he's doing some form of work in his submission. So we tried to not exclude in that regard, but at the same time, just wanted to give sort of a holistic picture of where we were with the contact aspect.
So then as of May 14th, this would tell me that there are no schools that have less than 50% daily, weekly engagement,
Correct,
right?
correct.
Okay. Because again, I've been hearing different responses from many teachers in the district, who are having great difficulty connecting with, in my opinion, far too significant a number of students. So
And this again looks at it over the aggregate. So certainly, I think at the lower levels, there are some middle schools that are doing quite well with it. But at the, a kid, the elementary kids, I think you'll see a higher percentage. So again, this is the aggregate. This is not broken down by grade level in that regard. So we actually have our school leaders populating are sharing this information with us as well. So, but I agree 100% with you. And I think, again, nationwide, that those are the types of reports that we're seeing with this experience in remote learning. I mean,
I completely understand the challenges. I'm not surprised by this. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Our families face a lot. So,
Yeah.
and our teachers, I know, we're trying. That's not my point at all. But I just want to make sure that as we're getting this information, that we kind of understand exactly what the metrics are telling us.
I see.
And it's not even, part of it is certainly having an understanding of how we complete this year. So, that's important for us to know. But I will be honest, looking at what September may look like, we're going to need to find out what works and what doesn't fast.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that, if individual schools, if I'm looking at a school that has an 89% response and engagement rate, we need to get to that school, find out what they're doing that's different, and be able to replicate it across our district over the course of July and the first 2 weeks of August. So that should we, when we come back, if we're still in this mode, which could be, honestly, we need to find out what's really working here in our community and be able to replicate it incredibly quickly. Because, this year going through with pass fail and, all that, it's been a crazy situation. We're doing the best we can. I get it. But, for September, this is going to be, it's an awful phrase, but the new normal. And we're going to be held to higher accountability standards. And our students need for us to be adept and find out what works for them and make sure that that's what we're prepared to do in September. So I appreciate the tracking of the data. I appreciate the reporting. I think a little more breakout as you get deeper into the data would be helpful. Because I think, again, the end game of data is informing good decisions. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much to both of you.
Okay, sure, Mr. Howie.
I agree with everything you just said, and I know, like, just through experience, when you're trying to do homework with someone that has special needs, a lot of times it can turn very frustrating in a house when you don't know how to teach. So I think those numbers are kind of big with special needs not reporting. But to stay on that type of subject, I know kids that my heart feel bad for, they show up every day, they have perfect attendance, there's no discipline problem at all. But when it comes to learning, they have an IEP that's very hard. And those are the kids that, to me, seem get rejected from the Greater Low Technical High School. I'd like to look into the superintendent maybe as a, to see if you can find out the percentage of kids that we send there, and you could look into some of them like that, see how the ones have great attendance, no discipline problems. Why aren't they looking at some of those children a little bit more? Maybe because they can't learn academically. There's always been a fight. I went to the trade school for a year. There's always an argument with regular teachers and shop teachers. They really never got along with each other. But I think we have to look into that for some of these kids that are real good and disciplined, show up all the time, they parents are with them. We should find a way to maybe get them into the vote ourselves. We spend a lot of money on that, so I'd like to look into it in the future. I think this is great stuff right now tonight. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I just had a question. On my agenda, it says, Mr. Dakota's motion about snow days, but I don't see anything in the report. So did the reports get crossed or? Anybody? Ms. Desmond?
You're correct. That motion was not addressed in this packet, so that was not, that inadvertently was put in there. That shouldn't have been in there.
Okay, thank you. Next, Mr. Dillon's motion, athletic director responsibilities. Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, thank you for the response. What I hope to accomplish was just to bring to light the issues that we have going on right now as far as athletics and physical education, music and art. None of those departments are represented well, I think, as far as having a leader and somebody who is advocating for them. The athletic director, not a full-time position. We've talked about it. And in better budget times, I think that we will get there, but might, I don't know how far we're going to get on this one, but I do want to keep it at the top of everybody's mind. It's a change that we need to make. Physical education, arts, and arts. They don't have a full-time department head, and it shows because it almost seems like they get half representation in advocating for their departments. So somewhere that I'd like to move to, and just looking at this athletic director responsibilities, it's time. I think it's time we move in that direction, but that's for another conversation at this point. Thank you for the report.
Thank you. I just had, sure, Mr. Hoey?
Thanks, Mayor, I appreciate it. This motion here to me is, the report is a good report. I think now, sometimes you get what you ask for, Mike, and the AD to me, that's the first thing I said to this new superintendent. When he came here, I remember we all could sit with him and give him a few things that were bothering us. And I said, when it came to athletics, I said to him, do me a favor. I said, get with the AD, get with a guy named Pat Sweat, which is now a vice principal over at Stocklosa. They have some great ideas. And it came from Bob Gignac when he was on the school committee before. And I just tried to keep it alive by putting it in the air with the superintendent. So I know he's already talked to Pat Sweat, excuse me. I know he's probably talked to the AD. And what's really exciting me, Mike, is Miss Desmond's going to be involved in this. And she knows a lot about high school and sports. And I'm just glad to have that brain involved in this because I think like the AD, Mike, myself should be always worrying about all his teams and getting out like a Walter Nelson maybe used to go to colleges to get kids into Holy Cross or BC. I thought those type of ADs are kind of dying off. But I think with Miss Desmond and Miss Superintendent knowing what I wanted, I kind of not pay attention to the issue anymore, Mike, because I think there's people already working on it. We might not like everything that comes out of it, but I think it's definitely going to be an improvement because I thought the AD, one thing he shouldn't be in charge of, because I don't think he has time, is evaluations of all his athletic guys. Like we're having a problem with evaluations. I don't remember the last time I did an evaluation. Hold on, I think it was Kafawi. Yeah, last time I did an evaluation was Kafawi, and now here's a superintendent coming up on a year. We haven't even talked about his evaluation, and now we want to evaluate all our teachers and evaluate everybody. We can't even evaluate the top. I don't know. I know I'm sounding a little bit like a pessimist. I'm not trying to, but I like this, Mike. I like the report, and I like what's coming for the athletic department because I got a good feeling superintendent's been quiet because he's too busy with bigger issues right now. So I'm happy with it, Mike. Nice job.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
I just want to clarify to put Mr. Hoey's mind at ease. We are mandated to evaluate the superintendent at the conclusion of a year. So traditionally, we've done it over the course of the summer. It's generally been led by the personnel subcommittee chair, so Ms. Clark can look forward to that job. But so don't fret, you will have an opportunity, just so you know and the community knows, our evaluation of the superintendent is one of the fundamental responsibilities certainly that we hold. Thank you.
Thanks. And I just wanted to add, my comments on this is that after reading this report, and really going through the job details and the job descriptions, one person cannot do this job. So I think in this budget, if we can get the will of the committee, I think this job has to be separated somehow. I don't know if we could do a stipend for physical education, have somebody chair that or something, but one person cannot do all this. And it's, it may not be a teaching position as far as classroom teaching, but it certainly reflects that, we're doing some of the kids a disservice here. So I think this is something we really need to look at and split these duties up somehow. It just, 2 pages of responsibilities. The AD director is out every weekend, almost every night, and then we want them to do evaluations. And there's 33, 34 responsibilities here. So I'm glad you brought this to light, Mr. Dillon. Go ahead, Mr. Dillon.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Dakota, you want to go first?
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
let you go first, Mr. Dillon, then I'll let him.
All right.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I did just want to clarify that, the superintendent has been very on board with working through this process.
Yeah.
And he, I think he agrees, and I think a lot of us agree that, the athletics #1 just requires so much work that, it can't be done. And the fact that phys ed is, also tied into his job, doesn't help phys ed department get treated well, around the school. But the superintendent has been very cooperative in working toward this. And in a better budget scenario, we might be talking about it, but here we are. But so we're working on it for future consideration. Definitely.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. I think it needs to be addressed. Mr. Dakota?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I could be wrong about the year, probably 96, maybe 5, or somewhere in there, 96, 97. It originally was 2 jobs, 2 people's jobs. And if anybody is as old as me with Mr. Hoey, Charlie Ryan assumed both of those positions, saying that he could handle both of them. But part of the whole ed reform thing hadn't kicked in yet, where the department chairs had to evaluate their staff and in great detail, far more than ever was done in classroom observations prior to that. So that was a monumental task that got heaved onto those department chairs, especially at the high school, that wasn't in existence before. And yet these should be 2 separate jobs. I completely concur with what's been said so far. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, thank you. Move on to the last report of the night, by Ms. Doherty, mental health and SW roles. Ms. Doherty?
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe we have someone registered to speak on this issue, and I was going to let the public go first.
All right. Sure, Mr. Hall, do you have the names in front of you?
I have, Kristen, are you ready? You're unmuted.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. First of all, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kristen Kirby, and I'm a social worker at the Greenhouse School. And I've been a social worker in Lowell Public Schools for 25 years. Prior to that, I was a social worker at the Mass Department of Children and Families. In addition, I also co-coordinate the Lowell Schools Critical Incident Response Team, and I'm the coordinator of the state NMLAC STARS Crisis Recovery Team, which responds to critical incidents not only in Lowell, but as well as 66 other NMLAC communities. I'm sharing my background with you so that you can see that I have a vast knowledge and experience with regards to mental health services to children and families. Over the past 35 years of my clinical practice, I've witnessed an ever-increasing rise in the mental health needs of students and their families. As you all know, the once single task of a school to educate students has expanded to encompass the whole child and to work to meet the child's academic, behavioral, social, emotional, and health needs. The stressors and difficulties brought forth in the world have expanded these needs exponentially. The district support specialists and the social work staff work tirelessly to support families and students and to help engage them and allow students successfully to access the curriculum. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has only worked to increase the mental health needs of our students and their families. For instance, just last week, district support specialists and social workers worked with a family who had suffered a violent home invasion. The perpetrator was a neighbor and was released to his home awaiting trial. This mother and her children were terrified to return to their home, and the social worker has worked night and day with this mother, the DA, and the victim witness to obtain alternate housing for the family. Another social worker and district support specialist was working to try to engage a student in more remote learning when they learned that the family had had their car stolen the night before and had no money to replace it, as their stimulus money had to go to a relative who had loaned them money the month before to pay their rent. And then there was the family whose mother had suffered multiple deaths to COVID and was grappling with long-time anxiety and depression, whose school social worker was working with her daily to keep this mother emotionally stable to care for her children. These are but a handful of situations that the social workers and district support specialists are addressing each and every day. If you listen to the experts with regards to this pandemic, these types of situations will only increase as we begin to return to a more normalized school schedule. Knowing what lies ahead, I'm very concerned when I read the mental health report submitted this evening. It discussed the responsibilities of the district support specialist to be handled by the chief of schools. The current district support specialists have years of experience and collaboration in this community that make them experts in their field of parental engagement and support. The chiefs of schools has an already lengthy list of responsibilities that I believe would make it difficult to prioritize the work that needs to be done under a district support specialist role. In connection with this concern is the plan to have the new SEL coordinator supervise a social work staff of over 40 clinicians. This is another individual that has a vast job description to oversee the implementation of SEL curriculum in all the schools in Lowell. Supervising the social work staff is not merely arranging staff meetings or professional development. It's a full-time job that requires ongoing community collaboration of services, structured weekly supervision of all clinical staff to maintain their DESE certification, and extensive knowledge of resources in the ever-changing mental health service system. You currently have a system that could continue to provide quality mental health services to Lowell Public School students and families. Maintain all of your current district support specialists, all of whom, by the way, are clinicians, and in addition, utilize one of them to supervise the social work staff. This will then allow your chief of schools and your SEL coordinator to handle the responsibilities they were hired to do. Please do not add these two vital mental health services as an afterthought to staff that are already tasked with important responsibilities. It's truly a disservice to the students and families. Now more than ever is the time to maintain quality mental health services as we confront this new normal and all that it brings with it. I personally am retiring in June, but in good conscience, I cannot sit back and watch this quiet dismantling of mental health services to our most vulnerable population. I hope you join me in prioritizing the needs of our students and their families by maintaining all of district support specialists, allowing them to continue the high quality work of parent engagement and service delivery to children, and have them continue to supervise one of the best assets you have in Lowell Public Schools, and that's your school social workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ingrid Markman.
Hold on. There we go. So this is going to be a little bit of a repeat, but I guess it bears repeating. It's an important topic, and it certainly goes right to a lot of the things you all have been talking about tonight. Attendance, dropouts, those are really things that are on the forefront of the mental health staff in the district, our social workers, our district support specialists. For those of you who don't know me, I'm currently the safety coordinator for Lowell Public Schools, and I've worked in Lowell Public Schools for the past 29 years, and in Lowell for 33 years. I guess I feel like an honorary citizen. As some of you may know, I am retiring from the district on June 30th of this year. It's been my great honor to serve the children and families of Lowell. And tonight I'm speaking on behalf of the LSAA. Until a little more than a year ago, when I took on the safety role, I had been the district social worker for 6 years. I oversaw the social work department, providing clinical supervision and consultation, professional development, and district-wide mental health initiatives and grants. The district social work position was discontinued when I took over the new safety position, but to this day, I continue some of those duties. This is the first time in 29 years that I've come before the school committee to speak of concerns. As we adjust to this new way of living and working under a pandemic, we have seen a growing concern for the mental health of our students, parents, and staff. The psychological impacts of the pandemic are only just beginning to come into focus. Students and adults alike are feeling the stress of social distancing, remote learning, fears of illness or death, loss, increased substance abuse, domestic violence, and poverty, all leading to a mental health crisis, one that we should be preparing for as we approach the new year in the fall. It is at this very time that the district is calling for a cut in mental health services. They've previously outlined the removal of 2 district support specialist positions from central office in their budget, and they are now suggesting that the role of social emotional learning coordinator can cover all the bases. This is simply not possible. Talking about doing 2 jobs. The SEL coordinator is already tasked with implementing district-wide SEL programming in all schools, educating and engaging parents around SEL, and creating specialized programs for highly dysregulated students in our elementary schools. They are now suggesting that in addition, she should be able to take on the oversight of the social work department, all 43 of them, and professional development for the district's clinical staff, including psychologists and guidance. Not to mention mental health grants and initiatives, which there have been many over the years. This would not be a simple add-on to her position, which tells me that there's not a good understanding of the needs of our clinical staff in the district. As for the removal of 2 of the 3 district support specialists from Central, the administration is likely not familiar with the roles these positions have played in the past and how they can support the district now. The 2 positions being cut are 2 master-level social workers, both of them bilingual. Together, the 3 district support specialists have 55 years of experience serving our most vulnerable families through advocacy, crisis response, case management, mediation, and much more. They have also overseen special programming and grants to do with the needs of our students. If these positions are maintained, the district specialists are highly qualified professionals who can provide much needed mental health supports to our staff, students, and parents as we move forward. As was discussed earlier, and I saw on the agenda as I was writing this report, Mr. Hoey made a request to the superintendent. In consideration of the stress and issues that students are dealing with because of COVID-19, I request the superintendent initiate a task force to look at how to take advantage of all our staff skills to best transition from this school year to the next. Who better to serve on this task force than our district support specialists who have worked tirelessly across the district, serving our families and students, and are familiar with our schools' administrations, teams, and staffs. So I ask you to take into consideration the mental health needs of our district as you look at the budget for next year. I am not asking you to create new positions, but merely to keep positions we already have in place to provide the mental health services including the oversight of the social work department, that we are surely going to need as we consider our plan for the fall. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your listening.
Thank you.
Rocio?
I'm going to put the video on. Hi, good evening. Thank you, school committee members, for allowing me to speak today, Mayor, Superintendent. Actually, I was kind of hoping Rosa would go first because I think I think there was a motion to ask more specifically what the role of the district support specialist, what it entailed. And so I believe Rosa's going to give those details. But I wanted to specifically speak to, within those roles, our particular skill set as bilingual district support specialists and clinicians as well. As you're aware, 34.4% of the student population in Lowell are Hispanic students. With that level of need, you know, the community, our bilingual capacity is really, really essential. And the bilingual role of the district support specialist has been around for a long time, prior to myself and Rosa in that position. But I wanted to just again speak to that, the need for bilingual representation within central office, that is something that I think our students are needing, particularly as you're understanding the role of the district support specialist. About 50% of the families that the district support specialist service are come in, or 50% of them are Spanish-speaking families who need our support. 40% of those students are facing some form of housing inequity or insecurity, which is again one of the roles within district support. My understanding is that the bilingual piece would really be supporting pillar 3 of the superintendent's goal to diversify the workforce and continue to provide for the highest quality of professional staff within Lowell Public Schools. So again, I know the school committee members wanted to know a little bit more about what the district supports do. And I kind of go before Ingrid and after Ingrid and Kristen, who spoke a little bit about district support. So I will defer next to Rosa, who's going to speak a little bit more specifically about the role. But I just wanted to address the ability to address our Hispanic students using our linguistic capacity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosa?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm coming before you today as first and foremost a resident of Lowell and a constituent to expand upon the job description of district support, which has been around. That job description particularly has been around for quite some time. I believe actually since the position itself has been in Lowell. And so as many of you may know, in working in various fields, you have a job description, but you have other tasks beyond that, that the job description doesn't really speak to necessarily. And that's very much the case with district support. District support has really evolved over the years and really is geared towards adapting to the needs of the community. And so with that, one of the greatest attributes that district support specialists have been able to provide students and families is, really that sort of wraparound supports. We engage collaboratively with community members and within our district departments to really help support families and students to really get all of the wraparound supports they need so that students can be successful in their education and beyond their education really throughout their lives. Many of my colleagues have already spoken to some of our roles. I would like to also add, even we do have our base functions, but each of us also has specific specialty areas. One of us has historically addressed cultural and climate needs in schools, and this includes PBIS and resources that positively impact our schools and culture and climate within them. Another has focused on mental health and first aid, and also focused on SEL work prior to the prior to the creation of the SEL coordinator role. I personally have had the privilege of serving as homeless liaison and foster care point of contact, something that the district support specialists have been responsible for since 2001, when the McKinney-Vento Act came into play and was reauthorized through the Every Student Succeeds Act in 2015, which then separated foster care from McKinney-Vento. That's a whole other topic that I'm happy to get into at another time. You know, those particular roles of homeless liaison and foster care point of contact are federally mandated as well, and really do need the support of and capacity and skill set of individuals that are able to support trauma, families experiencing trauma, and so on and so forth. Currently, right now, we have 1,260 actively enrolled students in Lowell Public Schools that are either homeless or in foster care. And the number of homeless students in the district has been on an upward trend since for the past few years, and has more than doubled since over the past few years as well. Undoubtedly, COVID-19 is just going to exacerbate the issue of housing insecurity for our families. So I expect this number to increase substantially. And again, DESE and you know, DOE really looks to ensure that school districts are having someone with the capacity to really support the needs of all of these subgroups of vulnerable students. The other pieces, again, we do collaborate frequently with our community members, and as homeless liaison and foster care point of contact, not just myself, but the other district support specialists also assist in supporting and reaching out to our community partners such as CTI and DCF. So again, I would like to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to speak in brief really about what some of our roles are. It's really not something that's easy to encompass in a 5-minute max conversation. But again, thank you as a citizen of Lowell for giving me this opportunity. And be safe and be well, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Doherty?
Thank you, Your Honor. I know it's no surprise for you all that I've been concerned about the mental health issues our students and families face. I think that we're potentially facing the biggest mental health crisis we've seen in Lowell since the 80s, and I wasn't here in the 80s, just with everything that's going on. So I have to say right out of the gate, on one hand, I wasn't surprised that this report didn't really highlight the intense role that the district support specialists play in terms of mental health and really engaging with our families and our schools and our students beyond the tier 1 concerns, the higher level crisis concerns, because I know that the administration was planning to eliminate 2 of these positions. So I get that, you know, part of that is making the case that we don't really need these positions.
That's inaccurate. That's inaccurate, Madam Committee Member. That's suggesting some level of conspiracy on the part of this administration, and that's inaccurate.
No. Let Ms.
That's
Doherty
inaccurate.
finish, and then we'll all speak.
I'm not suggesting any conspiracy, Dr. Boyd.
You didn't
I'm
suggest
just
it, you
saying,
stated
I
it.
understand that these positions, 2 of these positions have been slated to be reduced. That's reality, right? We got that report already, that budget. And my concern is, instead of moving and increasing our support around mental health, that this reduction, these particular roles, these particular people in these roles are going to do the exact opposite and give us less support. And, you know, the idea that the SEL coordinator position would be able to take on this added responsibility, as was mentioned by previous speakers, it's too many jobs for one person. As for Dr. Guillory taking on that role. He already has enough on his plate. So if I could just, through you, Your Honor, is Ms. Turner still here? What is the savings of eliminating these two positions? Let's just get that number out there. Is she, I don't see her.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, I see you. Okay. Do you know what the savings would be by reducing those two positions?
Between 180 and 200,000.
Okay, so I'm just saying, when we get to that point, let's find $200,000 somewhere else. Let's not reduce the supports that are already strained on the mental health of our children and our families and our schools. Most districts our size, I believe, all have separation between SEL and mental health. They're different things. And I just feel very strongly this is not the way we should go. And I'll end it with that. Thank you.
Mr. Hoey?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few comments. One is, first, I want to tell those ladies that are retiring to enjoy it and hope they live a long time collecting checks. Ms. Kirby, trying to replace someone like her, I think, Andy, you might have been with me at the Greenhouse School when she has a back room full of toys for tots. We're not going to be able to replace a lady like her. Miss Kirby, I hope you live a long life. Thank you for what you did for all the kids at the Greenhouse School. I never seen anybody collect that many toys and bicycles in a school in my life, and I've been trying to watch everything. Miss Rosa spoke, and I do know her. She did a great job. I was hoping I heard Kathy Keene tonight that worked with all these people. But I do know something about the SEL coordinator, Lindsay. I think she's very confident in her new position, and I think she's confident that she can handle her added duties. Why I like her so much is because of the school she came from. I think the Starklosa School, a school that we have in the past that is underperforming. Well, after this virus and we look at everything, you're going to see what that school did with technology, where we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off. That school has been well prepared. When it comes to bullying, this Lindsay, I can't say her last name, I'll destroy it. But this Lindsay, I've seen what she's done with some bullying in that school. And the principal, I mean, come on. The Starklosa School had his staff visit homes. When's the last time you ever heard something like that the union would do? So I love these people myself, these district support specialists. Kathy Keene is one of my best friends in life. And I think she used to be a principal in one of our alternative schools. It goes back a while ago, but I just know that I hope we don't lose anybody, to be honest with you right now. And I think if we have some patience, you'll see we're not going to lose some special people like that. Might lose the position. I don't know. I don't know that enough. I don't know enough about all this stuff. But I got a feeling that this administration is trying to save jobs, not get rid of them, but we have to prepare for the worst. And I just think we got to keep an open mind. And I was really impressed with Rosa. I thought she was going to have a hard time speaking. She did a great job. And these people that came to the mic, I give them a lot of credit and thank you for the extra time, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion from any other committee members? Sure, Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I do think that these three positions are of incredibly high value for our district. I think that as we, and as we get into our conversations, again, regardless whether it's a 1/12 of the, whatever, it is going to be a very important concern for all of us to ensure that we are making these investments in the mental health capacity within this district. So I do strongly support the positions. I do think that we have the opportunity to be able to ensure that these positions and this work continues to be done. I'm interested in some of the suggestions that the individuals in these positions have shared with us tonight. I really appreciate everyone taking the time, especially those of you who are retiring. I thank you both for many, many years of good service here in Lowell. our kids and families are better off because of the work you've done. And I will say moving forward, yeah, as Ms. Doherty has mentioned, it's going to have to be one of our key concerns, and recognizing that, yes, we're going to be making some painful cuts, I believe. I think given our current circumstance particularly, and given our, just our every day-to-day population that we work with, it's going to be critically important that we have a very strong mental health response team, including the coordinator, including, the supervision of all of these different positions across the district, and including these three positions that have been doing so much of this work and coordinating so much of this work. We're really going to be relying on that group of individuals to ensure that our kids and their families are safe. It's going to be a baseline safety issue. And we all know that if a child isn't in a safe environment, they're not learning, whether they're in a classroom, online, no matter what. So it is the most fundamental thing we need to support our families and children with. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comments?
One more, Mayor.
Sure, quickly, Mr. Howie.
I think I'd like to look back at our last few budgets. I forget how I voted on social workers. I want to think that I never voted against them. I'd like to see, how we voted, or did we cut social workers? I know we hired some psychiatrists, but when it comes to social workers, I'd like to know how we've done in the past couple of budget sessions. Have we made some cuts? If you don't mind, Mr. Superintendent, I know I give you a lot of work now, but I would like to know, have we cut social workers in the past couple of years?
I believe that was a past motion by, I want to say, Committee Member Doherty. We can resurface that for you, Mr. Hoey, and provide that to you under separate cover.
Thank you.
If I could, Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
because I think throughout the course of this conversation, from the very first motion till the last, we've touched on some important aspects of our work currently and going forward that's going to be necessary for us to keep in mind. We touched on the immense needs facing the district. We talked about dropouts. We talked about the needs, possibly the needs looking forward with a new head of school for a reorganization at the high school. We talked about the immense health needs that our kids are going to be coming to us with, mental health needs from this pandemic. We talked about the needs for the greater needs that we have for data. We've talked about that all within the context of how lean this district is through all the many cuts that this district has faced. That's been highlighted through the struggles with coming up with $1 million of cuts centrally. I, for one, I believe that our central office is extremely lean, but I also know my responsibility is to present a balanced budget recommendation to the committee. And quite frankly, it doesn't look like it's getting better. It looks like it's going to be getting more difficult before the federal stimulus comes in, hopefully. This is going to be a difficult budget cycle, but I've actually reached out to every individual that was directly impacted. And I reach out to people from a personal standpoint because I too was affected during a budget reduction where I was in a central office position where I was working nonstop. The entire office, unfortunately, was downsized. For myself, my family, we didn't know what the next step was. But fortunately, there was another opportunity within the district. That's how I ended up becoming a regional superintendent in Philadelphia that ultimately launched me into the superintendency in Santa Fe that finds me here. So I value every single person in our district. I sat back and I listened to the conversation of the committee. And while sometimes the words thank you are expressed, it may not actually be heard that way. So I also want to say not only to those individuals that I think it was quite clear how they are valued. There's a number of our high school leadership team on this call, some that have been texting me. We value your leadership as well. The conversation among the committee is about the many challenges going forward. It's not about your individual work. It's not about your personal work. And I also want to say to our cabinet members who put themselves by signing up to this job and being a cabinet member in the line of fire, that the committee appreciates you as well. I certainly appreciate you. And the feedback is not criticism, it's critical feedback so we can all grow and learn together. This is going to be a challenging time for us. Challenging not simply because it's going to be a difficult financial road ahead, but because we simply don't know where that road ends. This road is going to lead us on a journey together where we're going to have to come together to build a different path forward for our kids. And we're going to have to do that together as one district, one community, one Lowell. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, we are going to have some difficult choices and we'll debate them, and in the end, we'll come up with a responsible budget. Ms. Martin, did you have an? Oh, all right. We gotta move on, Mr. Howie. It's taking a long time. I gotta cut you off on this one. We gotta go to the next one. So if we're all set with the motions, I need a motion to accept the reports 8-1 through 8-15 as reports of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Dakota. Before we get to new business, I inadvertently misplaced this. I guess Jen Parasol, you're still out there. I think you wanted to speak to the budget, maybe?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak to all of you. Over the many years of working for the Lowell School Department, I have had numerous opportunities to address important issues concerning the clerical group, starting with Local 159 and up to the present, now SEIU 888. Many of you know that our group continues to be cut, and we are now facing additional cuts to our group. These two positions are grade level 7 executive secretary positions. One of these positions was held by Nancy Cody, who recently retired and had worked for Robin Desmond. The other position was held by Mary Sheehan, who worked for Latifah Phillip. So what I am asking from you tonight, I'm asking for you not to remove these two positions from the budget, but rather put a dollar amount in the line as a placeholder so that these positions can be revisited as a good faith effort once funds are available. At that time, the Lowell Public School Department staff that applied for these two positions be given the opportunity for career growth, because many of our promotional opportunities for our members with longstanding years of service to the Lowell Public School Department have not been given that opportunity, as with they had gone to outside sources. The secretarial department is a backbone of the school department. We may not all have the degrees that teachers, administrators have. However, we are subject matter experts when it comes to clerical work. I just want to remind you that our membership over the years have been cut over 35%. The work has not lessened, it has increased. And with the increase and the downsizing of departments, the work is then filtered down to other clerical people who are already doing what they can with the best that they have. I want to thank you for your time and consideration. Stay safe and healthy. And thank you again.
Thank you, Jen. Sorry I forgot you.
Yeah, you never forgot me.
You're unforgettable. New business, portrait of graduate critical participation action research. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you. This is part of our grant. As part of the school district policy, any level of research coming into the district comes before the school committee for approval. But this is not typical in terms of a doctoral research project. This is research that is embedded within the grant. Ms. Phillips is available if there's any questions from the committee. The recommendation's approval as written.
Any questions on the report? Sure, Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, do we know who community partners are? When referred to community partners?
Ms. Phillips?
Mr. Mayor, school committee members, Mr. Superintendent, we are currently seeking community partners. So we have an RFP out right now.
Okay, I mean, yeah, it's mentioned kind of throughout working with community partners. I was just wondering if it was.
But we are seeking representatives of our diverse community to be able to provide the voice of communities that we haven't heard from, historically or recently.
Okay, I didn't know if that was like specific groups or just like members of the community.
Well, we're looking for organizations that represent the community, but we are open to individuals who have also worked, have a proven record within the community.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Sure, Mr. Hoey, and then Ms. Clark.
Yeah, before we adjourn, I just think it'd be a good idea for you or your office. We don't do much on the spotlight of excellence right now, but I think we're getting a little bit late to say thank you to our basketball coach this year, the hockey coach this year, track team, and the ROTC. They're all kind of elite teams that we forgot to say great job this year. I think those are the type of things you could do, Mayor, to lessen the burden on the superintendent. I think you do a lot of letters to people. Go out and touch a few of those. I think it'd be a good idea for you, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
Just wanted to say about the portrait of a graduate work that I want to thank Project Learn and others who have participated in this work thus far and enabling us to get this grant. I think this is a very exciting opportunity to really inform us of some ways that we can really be sure that we are engaging and serving all of our community members and students to the best of our ability to create opportunities for them to be successful, not only in school, but in life. And so I just wanted to acknowledge them and say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the work that's happening, Ms. Phillips, and looking forward to seeing the community members that are involved in this. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions on portrait of graduate? Need a motion to,
Need a motion to approve.
yeah, motion to approve by Ms. Clark, seconded by Ms. Doherty. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Mr. Dillon? Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Mayor Leahy?
yes.
Approved. 7 yeas.
Thank you. 9.2, approval of proposed update job descriptions for summer school and consideration for need for remote learning. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you. This is a recommendation to adjust the summer school jobs to account for the high variability in the structures that may be available, including the need for remote learning. Ms. Desmond's available to answer any questions. Before I do, though, I think there's a proof of evidence of all the people here of how dedicated they are, because I'm hearing some piano playing, or was hearing some piano playing. So somebody's doing a beautiful job of playing piano and they're missing that from their family. So whoever is missing out on that, thank you for joining us for the school committee meeting. There is Ms. Desmond is available to answer, but this adds the notion of remote learning to the job description ahead of time, making some of those adjustments that Ms. Martin alluded to earlier need to be made going forward.
Any questions on the? I just had a quick comment or something, Ms. Desmond. So I didn't get the report in the packet, and when I went online to look at it, I was hitting the top part of the of the queue, and I didn't see the other report underneath it till afterwards. So, and then I didn't know what the changes were. So are there any changes in there, or what's going on with
Yes,
it?
there's actually significant changes, Mayor Leahy. Our previous job descriptions were very specific to in-school learning. So these job descriptions have been written so that we're looking for candidates who have experience using remote learning platforms, who have a willingness to develop remote learning lesson plans. And so it really speaks to the fact that we have a plan A and a plan B moving forward for the summer. If we do have any sort of, return to school, we'll be prepared for that. But we are also fully prepared for a remote learning summer school experience for all of our students. And that will go across all of our summer programming. So our 21st century programming, our credit recovery, our ELL high school program, the Compass program, and the IDEA camps. So those job descriptions have been rewritten for all of those programs.
So how does that affect maybe people that have been involved, are they not eligible to apply then, or?
No, so all of the platforms we're using currently during this school year, and we have provided professional development opportunities. Most of the online platforms, we have created PD videos that are available on our remote learning teacher site. There are staff from the curriculum office that have been providing Zoom professional developments for teachers. And we are certainly able to do that for all staff. So if anyone's interested in learning those platforms and implementing them now, we are available to provide any support they need.
All right, and I don't mean to sound like I don't get this, but so what are it would have helped if I had known what it was before and what the proposals were. So what changed in the description?
So in the job description, you'll find that we are asking for candidates who have experience using some of the platforms such as Zoom. So if if you're teaching right now using remote learning, most of our teachers are either using Zoom or Google Classroom. Those platforms have been specifically added to the job description.
Okay, so.
None of that was referred to before.
Why are we changing this? That's what I don't get. If everybody's changed already over, why are we?
The old job descriptions for summer school were specific to in-school learning. So these job descriptions add the remote learning component. So we only post these every summer, so they were not updated with this change until now.
All right. So I guess, not to belabor this, but are we changing all of our descriptions then in the future for hiring teachers to have all these remote learning qualifications?
Well, for these particular postings, this is just for summer school.
Right, but if we change summer school, we're gonna change it for next year too, for regular school?
I would have to defer to Jim Hall on.
I don't, okay,
Yeah.
that's all right. Sure, Mr. Hoey, did you have a question?
No, I'm good, thanks, Mayor.
All right. Are we all set on this? Any questions? Okay. Roll call.
I don't.
Okay, motion by Ms. Doherty, seconded by Ms. Martin, roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Mr. Dillon?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes,
Mayor Leahy?
I'm just gonna vote no, thank you.
6 yeas, 1 nay, approved.
Professional personnel, UTL sick leave. The members of United Teachers of Lowell hereby donate 28 sick days to Kristen Collin, Lowell High teacher. Motion by Mr. Hoey, seconded by Mr. Dakota. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Mr. Dillon?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey? Mayor Leahy?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Okay, any announcements or?
Looks like Dylan has his hand
Yeah,
raised, Mr.
Dylan.
Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to clarify before we get out of here is on the St. Louis school.
Yeah.
Who's the guy who gets working on that? Well, I'll call the archdiocese. If you want me
I've
to.
already been working on it, Mike.
Amazing.
I already have it.
All right. Well,
The city's included in the conversation. I know, Mr. Dakota, you've been working with
All
the
right.
city.
we'll
Yeah.
talk. We'll talk then, Andy. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I just want to make sure that we're moving on it.
Oh,
The
I-
Dakota Global Trust
Good
is,
suggestion.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
All right, need a motion to adjourn by
So
Mr.
moved.
Hoey, seconded by Mr. Dakota. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Take care. Be well.
You too.